Hello everybody, my name is Miguel Valenzuela and we're here once again with a show called Creative Thinkers. So I always like to start out the show by quoting, and I'm going to quote Einstein by saying that creative people are individuals who have seen what everybody else has seen, yet thought something different from that creativity and followed through in a different way. So my guest today is going to be Joe Dorgan. He is the creator of Club 101, and one of the main reasons why I invited Joe is because I feel that he has been, ever since I met him 30 years ago, a very creative individual, and I feel that he is one of the best individuals to interview and talk about these ideas of thinking outside the box. So with that, I introduced Joe Dorgan. Hi Joe, how are you?
Real good, thanks for having me here.
Absolutely,
it's been 30 years? Wow.
Yes, it's been quite a long time. I see you off and on every once in a while around maybe at a club or different places, and I want to start talking to you about how you started thinking as a youngster to begin to view things outside the box. What influenced you, who influenced you, what types of things have kind of led you to where you are today as an individual?
Well, my mother was a high school teacher, and she taught economics, but we would have these long talks about entrepreneurship, and then she always had about that quote about the road less traveled, you know, take that road less so she made me really start thinking outside the box.
Is that something that you've kind of dealt with throughout your life? Was that something you just talked about with your mother?
No, I just always, you know, if I see that there's everybody here, I might want to look at what's over here. Yeah, I'm always looking for something different.
And your mother, was she a huge influence on what you, or the way that you think, or have there been other things as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's been other influences, friends, music, art, you know, it's all over, yeah.
So I think one of the main things that we had spoken about prior was the fact that you have been highly influenced by creative people, artists per se, when you were in college. Can you let us know the type of individuals that you kind of interacted with and how they helped you begin to push these new ideas that you had?
In college,
I remember you had stated at some point in one of our earlier conversations about how you kind of hung out with the crowd that was a little bit more artistic and artsy, and that was a little prior to your starting up your club, which was Club 101, and you actually had a club before. So if you can expand a little bit on that idea of how surrounding yourself with these creative people has helped you.
Yeah, I was DJing, and there's this place called the Last Iguana, and that was in the 80s, and just, you know, I had a love for alternative music, you know, what was coming out in LA, not necessarily what's on our local radio, and I'd read English publications, and I was ordering music and stuff, and we started doing these parties, and just that place was for the different kids, we call them the misfits, that didn't fit into the top 40 mainstream crowd. Mm-hmm. And it was just overwhelming. I mean, it was a time where, like the Smiths, there was guys wearing skirts and guys in the girls' bathroom. There were just so many, you know, it was really cool, you know.
So the Last Iguana was prior to Club 101.
Right.
And the Last Iguana, how did that come about? What was the catalyst for creating this club? You were DJing, as you stated earlier, and then you just kind of slipped into this whole new realm of having your own club, or was that something that you kind of started on the side? How did that start? How did it begin?
Well, I was supposed to go to Southwest Texas University, but I couldn't. As a freshman, you had to live in the dorm, and I didn't. And so my sister I had an older sister who was at UTAP, and why don't you get into the fraternity life? You know, why don't you give it a chance? And I started going to these parties, and at the time they had record players on the floor, and I'm like,
at the fraternities.
Yeah. So I liked this group of guys, but you know, we built a DJ booth and we started DJing there, and I would make the flyers and go to the campus. I could flyer the whole campus in an hour. But these parties were like big keg parties, and I had some good memories, but a friend of mine who went to high school and was in college, Sherry Dorsey, we both loved alternative music, Oingo Boingo, Depeche Mode, things like that. So that wasn't a good outlet for us at these mainstream parties, you know.
Because they wanted to listen to different types of music, which you weren't into at that point.
Well, you know, I liked it, but it's just we were really wanting to go into more of the Smiths, the Cure. So we started this, we were both really big fans of David Bowie, and I came up with this idea, we'll have a traveling club and call it Major Tom's. So then we looked for a place to do it at, and there was this hall called Last Iguana, which was a perfect place, a big like hall. And we took over a night on Friday, and then it was supposed to be for college kids, but the owner's like, hey, you know, there's all these high school kids, you want to let them in? I'm like, we go look outside, and they were all cool kids that were into the music. And then it just like snowballed, and then bands, local bands were like, hey, can we play here? And I'm like, okay, so we put them on the other night, and then.
So then it became a weekend instead of just one day.
Yeah.
So I find it interesting that you're telling us that one of the things that helped you out was the fact that you had individuals that were doing something and you felt like you needed to think a little bit, you know, a little bit outside the box in order to get something started, and then it snowballed from there. So how did that then push you into what we call Club 101? Because everybody knows what Club 101 is. Can you tell us how you started, what the avenues were that you took, how, we'll start with that, I guess.
Okay. Well, you know, we were at the Last Iguana, and then I just felt like we needed to play. This place was on the east side of El Paso. We needed to do something on the west side, closer to the college, which got me into the Mesa. And we'd been there a while, and I just felt like I was working for all these people. I had a boss, and I wanted to be in control of everything. I wanted to be in charge of the bar. I wanted to have my own place. So, you know, I looked into the newspaper, and I've always wanted, because I was inspired by Deep Ellum in Dallas, you know, these warehouse clubs.
Right, which is very underground, right?
Yeah, or in LA. And so I got a newspaper, and I call, hey, I hear you have a warehouse for lease. I'm interested in doing a nightclub. Click. I'm interested in doing a club. Click.
Now, let me ask you a question and stop you there for a second. Do you think, from your experience doing that, that people weren't interested because it was something that was different and not their norm? They wanted to rent out a space to store things, whereas you wanted to do something completely different.
Oh yeah, they just want mailbox money. They just want something that's easy, like club. So I said, I have to think out of the box. So I saw this building in the Times about, it was at what's called Union Plaza, and I'm like, okay, hi, I'm interested in renting your building. What would you like to do? I'm like, I'd like to do a wedding hall. They're like, okay, come see this building. And the guy actually was from Dallas, Mr. Niemeyer, and he said, why don't you do like a club, like a Deep Ellum? I'm like, oh, you're speaking my language, but you know, I was tired of people hanging up on me, and I wanted to try a different approach. You have an obstacle, and you're like, okay, well, how can I get them to understand? So that's what happened. And from there, we took this warehouse, which was and you know, you have to block out, because, you know, it was in a rundown neighborhood. You know, there was border crossing. People from Mexico were crossing over and getting on the trains, and, you know, it was just, and it was a rundown neighborhood, but I just saw that this could be a cool warehouse district. You know, people thought I was crazy. What do you know, why don't you get on Mesa Street, you know? Mm-hmm. No, because I want to be something tucked away, you know, that's what I wanted to do. So
the Club 101, was that one of the very first clubs in that downtown area? Because Union Plaza now is very, very well known. I mean, they've really built it up. What year was that?
1989.
Wow, that was a long time ago. So what else was in that area at that time?
There's a tire company, really nothing. There was just a lot of property owners that own those buildings that were just sitting on them. There was a vacant building next door. Well, actually, yeah, it was a building, yeah, that homeless were sleeping in. I mean, you know, there's just, you know, it was just a rundown warehouse, you know.
So right next to your club was an abandoned warehouse with people just kind of squatting there.
Yeah, and then there was a fire one time that, I mean, then they finally tore that building down.
Wow.
And then, but after 101 was successful, and I would think after like 10 years, then there was like Club 69 or something like that.
But it took 10 years for that kind of to grow?
Well, there's a Pat Golf, you know, he really was a big pioneer, about a promoter of downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got with me and other people and said, hey, why don't we dress this area up and what it could be like? And we put a party together in 6 weeks, like to have a Christmas party in Union Plaza. There was like 10,000 people there. So then
That's impressive.
Then all of a sudden the interest was like, you know, let's do an entertainment. And so it just took off.
And Club 101, which is a place that I used to actually visit, you know, quite often every weekend. It was almost like a religious thing to go and be at Club 101, watch shows, meet people, meet friends, just have a good time. Club 101, the name, where does it stem from? How did you get it to where it became very big? How did you push all these new ideas onto the viewers, the participants in what Club 101 became?
Well, down there I'm on San Francisco Street, so I used to go to California a lot, and I'm a believer in keeping it simple, stupid. I love that. And I was just like, well, you know, like the old plantation was before Club 101.
Mm-hmm.
And people call it the OP, so I've always liked that highway sign, Highway 101. People thought I named it after the Depeche Mode 101 album, but
that's what I always thought.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So I let people, okay, I didn't deny it or anything. I just, you know, people were wondering for years how do we got it, but it was really the Highway 101 sign. I mean, I thought about, well, okay, Club Alcatraz. I was thinking of all these things for San Francisco, but I was like, nah, that's forced. It's too much. So, and I had a friend that was an artist, and then, you know, Sherry Dorsey and other people. I love collaboration, and like I may have an idea, but somebody can expand and make it better. We went through different logos, different things like that. I mean, Sherry was in the art world, man. And that's probably where I saw you at art shows and things like that. Just soaking it all in, all these cool people making jewelry, art. I'm like, I would let artists change the club every 6 months because it just kept it fresh. I would give artists canvases. We got to where, you know, they could paint upstairs and they'd put art in the, you know, on the walls and stuff.
I think I remember that artwork on the walls that was hanging in there, and like you say, every once in a while it changed up. I didn't know that you did that with artists. So now talking about artists, because I feel that that's one very, very creative avenue. How do you feel that individuals that think outside the box help us move forward in any way? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, I mean, for me, it just stimulates my thought process. When I go to an art show, a movie, or a concert, you know, I was just at a concert last night, and I'm just like seeing this woman just giving it all, her art. I'm like, I went home, started thinking about what I'm going to do next, like some of the events I'm going to work on. Yeah, I mean, I'm always inspired by artists.
Because I think that artists are very important for our world.
Oh, yeah.
So this show is very much about creativity and thinking outside the box. What can you tell us to help the viewer understand how important creativity is?
How important it is?
Or why it's important?
People have an idea and they think, oh, I can't do this because there's already a million of them. But I think if you're if you think of an idea and you just, I mean, creativity is just like, there's so many good examples of some, I mean, I was told I couldn't do a club, and there was already too many clubs, and this is already being done. But I did it a different way. There's, creativity. I mean, I would just tell people, don't give up, I always like going out of town, and sometimes I get stuck, and I'm like, I can't figure out how to, and then it's just, one time, we did this bar called the Ice Bar, but it wasn't, it was next to Club 101, but we had moved 101 to Mesa Street. But we had this opportunity to take this space, and I couldn't think of what we would do with this bar. I remember seeing this ice bar in Las Vegas, but we were in Miami, and just I saw ice cold refreshment or ice this, and it just like, you know, boom, we're going to call this the ice bar, and we're going to do this and we do that. You know, creativity is everywhere. Just got to be, you know. I was talking earlier, it's like kids, they're just, you know, man, kids are so creative, and they don't think of no, they're just like sponges, you know, fearless. So.
And I think that that's a very important aspect of what we're talking about, the kind of idea of not having fear stop us, because that's one of the things that I think a lot of people are influenced by. One might be influenced by the fear of the judgment from others, or maybe having a wall put up by somebody else, like a family member or whatnot.
Exactly.
Do you feel that you ever ran into something like that at any point in your life?
Yeah, I mean, my parents were educators, and, you know, I just like, wow, I can't be an educator because that's, but I mean, my nephew, he wants to be a writer, but he's always been told, you know, do something safe, make sure, take care of, you know, having a career, you know. And I think a lot of people just like have regrets. I wished I had done this, I wished I'd done that. I just had this love of music since I was in 6th grade. I mean, I did it for the wrong reasons. I looked across the street and there's these 2 cute girls, I think I was in 6th grade, and they were playing KC and the Sunshine Band. It was on this 45, and I'm like, I want to go talk to these girls, you know. I was just a kid, you know, I was doing it all for the wrong reasons. And then a kid next door, an older kid, was listening to the Rolling Stones and just like, wow, listening to the lyrics, and I just saw that. So yeah.
So you've always been influenced by music.
Yeah.
What do you think, in your opinion, has been your biggest influence musically? Is there a specific artist or a specific type of music, and how in the world did it do that for you? Or if there are several, you know, tell us a little bit about them and how they kind of inspired you or helped you out.
You know, through the changes of my life, I mean, when I was in high school, I was playing basketball, and I was probably one of the only white kids playing on this team. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to these guys' music, Earth, Wind and Fire, and, you know, really great stuff, which I still like. And then I went to college, and I started experiencing alternative music, you know, REM, The Cure, and stuff like that. And then I started reading music magazines, and just like, yeah, just, and then, you know, people always said, you know, this song is really good, but it's so much better in Spanish. And then it clicked in me in college. They're right, you know, that song. I'm not bilingual, you know, I can read Spanish, and I kind of understand. I guess I'm just, but yeah, music, all types of music. My dad was huge country music. He used to annoy us. He'd wake us up with country music. Then I started to appreciate it. I heard the lyrics and stuff like that. So
that's interesting, because my dad used to play bossa nova. That's that old school jazz, and
yeah.
I hated it. But I actually is one of my favorite genres now, which is interesting because he opened my mind to see things from a different light or from a different angle. You know, when I was younger, you know, you listen to disco or you listen to, to pop or whatever is on the radio or what have you, and then you get influenced by these little things that are in the back of your mind at all times, and then that sparks a little fire, and that little fire then turns into other things. Just as you were telling us earlier about the club and how you kind of started from the record players that you saw with the other guys that were your friends at that point, but you said, I can't stop here. I have to see what I can do and push the envelope.
Right.
What was one of the very first things as a youngster that you did that helped you get to where you are today? Like an event or something somebody said or a statement that was made or anything like that. Was there anything in particular off the top of your head?
As a youngster, like before high school or something?
Yeah, at any point. Because sometimes when you're young, you have these experiences. Like for me, one of the experiences that I had was with one of my uncles, and one of my uncles was always thinking outside the box. I remember I was telling my daughters just a few days ago that I was excited when the first time I went into my uncle's room and I saw really the fresh experience. I'd been into his room many times, but the fresh experience of seeing a whole room full of 1960s band posters, that was impressive to me. I had never really experienced that. I had seen it 100 times before, but it wasn't until that one day that I walked in and I really was able to take it in. And then I began to ask questions, which has a lot to do with creativity. So for you, was there any particular event or anything like that that helped push you into what you have done throughout your life?
God, I just think my neighborhood, just there was these cool kids that came in from Las Vegas, and I was just like, wow, these kids are so cool. Their bicycles are so different. Their music's different. Then I had these older kids on our block that listening to different music. I remember being in their garage shooting pool when Elvis died.
Oh, wow.
I just experienced the neighborhood. I remember us getting into trouble and then just realizing, we were influenced by Evel Knievel. We were building ramps and killing ourselves. And nowadays everything's so, kids can't play in playgrounds because they're afraid they get hurt and stuff like that. But we survived all these dumb things we did, in the neighborhood.
I think it's a very different world, and that's why I think that this show is important, to help people understand the values of what it is to allow yourself to think freely, allow yourself to be influenced by these things. I think it's very interesting that you said that you were influenced by people that were from another place. How do you think that that will help people to the degree of them allowing somebody like from Las Vegas, as you said, coming in and bringing these new things to help and as a catalyst to help you move forward? Why do you think that's important?
They just have, they're from a different area. They think differently. Really should just get out of your comfort zone, and you really should, even if it's just going to Albuquerque, that's not far away. Phoenix, go see some art shows, go see, it's amazing, drive to Dallas or Austin or something. But yeah, I think it's real, because you get real comfortable. You just you do the same thing. You don't see anything that just really says, wow.
And do you think that you were ever in a comfortable place where you thought, I think this is where I'm going to stay, or have you always continuously moved forward? I
could have stayed at the Mesa Inn forever. I just really felt like we were getting stagnant. I got to take this to a different level. I want to be in charge of everything, A 101, I was just there forever. There's a couple times where I felt like, I'm stagnant, and then I go talk to somebody, like, what can I do to shake it up? I used to love to go to, my friends at KLAQ would go call the general manager and say, I need to do something different. Can I get with your staff and let's talk about things? And especially a woman's point of view, that might see it differently than for me. So I've always collaborated. I think we've all worked at jobs where they tell you this is the way it's going to be and that's it. And I think that's really unhealthy for a business, because the people that are working with you are your eyes and ears. And they're like, hey, let's do it this way. So you've always been open to new ideas then? Oh, absolutely.
It hasn't just been your way or the highway.
Oh, no.
Do you feel that would have been a little bit of you building a wall for the individuals and maybe kind of stopping the creativity there? And is that one of the reasons why you felt like, if I am influenced by other individuals, then I can move forward? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, I encourage people to be creative, Somebody told me once, when you're green, you grow. And, I always made it a we thing when I had a business. It's like, okay, what are we going to, I made Club 101 not about Joe Dorgan. It's like, what tell people this is your club. We would have meetings like, what can we do on this night? Or what are we missing?
And that's one of the things that I liked about going to Club 101. When I was younger, I really liked the fact that I could be myself. Whereas if I went to another club, I had to pretend to be somebody else. And I think that from my point of view, being myself is what has led me to do the things that I've done in my life. Travel, see things differently, have the ability to move forward and get an education and start teaching, which I love to teach, but it's the opportunity to have the ability to be myself that has really pushed me. And I think a lot of people don't have that, and it's very hard for them to move forward. Why did you choose to do that for others? To allow them to think freely and openly, and then maybe influence you in many ways.
Maybe I had an idea, but somebody could take it to a different level, you know. And I've had so many examples. I was supposed to do this big benefit at Club 101, and it was for, but anyway, it was a benefit, and it was going to be this big 80s street party. And we picked a perfect day that there was no competition, the weather, we checked everything. So I was just like, you know, I want to get this right. So I go to KLAQ, and this woman comes up, or this one lady says, a friend of mine, she says, I don't like this date. And I'm like, why don't you like this date? There's no other shows. She's like, that's the first day before school starts. Mothers like to get their kids ready before school starts. And I'm like, oh, beautiful.
Wow.
So my suggestion was to the promoters, let's scale it back, let's take it to, they didn't listen, and they lost money. But
wow, really?
That stuck with me, is that I might think that I've got all my ducks in a row. I just want to ask one more person. And, you know, it would have been successful if we'd scaled it down. So,
and maybe pushed it to another date.
Oh,
so we've talked a lot about all of these ideas about creativity, and I think that we've kind of pushed the envelope on allowing people to think outside the box. Is there anything new that you're doing that you're coming up with? And also let us know how people can get in touch with you.
Well, I'm going to reopen a place. I'm not sure whether I'm going to do a bar or maybe a concert venue. I just saw live music, and now I'm just like, oh, that's in your, you know,
yeah.
It's a love-hate thing. You do a show and it does well, then you want to do more.
And how can people get a hold of you?
How do I get a hold of me?
Yeah. You have Facebook?
Facebook, yeah. Joe Dorgan's the easiest. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter.
So you're constantly showing us new things there, what you're up to, where you're going, what's new, so on and so forth? Right
now I'm doing a weekly at a club, but I'm going to start doing some, just being at the show last night, I want to do some pop-up parties. And I think I want to collaborate with some other people that are not in the club business.
Very cool.
Tying in with their group.
Very cool. Well, I want to thank you, Joe, for coming and talking to me a little bit about how you started, what you did, creativity, and what's in the future for you. So I'm going to close the program by thanking Joe for coming and visiting with us, and I hope you guys tune in for our next show. Thank you very much.